Tonight on Debate 13.
The United States will withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord.
Welcome to Debate 13, our newest programme here on Force 13, where for an hour, at least on this occasion, we'll be discussing what's in the news with opinion from our panel. This week, we have Cesar Gamez from Leon in Mexico. He's the head of Force 13 on Espanol and loves recording thunderstorms, and I gather he fancies a little bit of artistry too, I'm led to believe. Hello, Cesar.
Hello, Nathan. Thank you.
Yes, I'm sure you'll have a few things to say towards the end of today's debate, of course. We also have John Alfwyn from Derbyshire here in the United Kingdom, joined the project just last week, and hopefully we'll be seeing a lot more of him on our Force 13 UK and Ireland platform. Hello, John.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. We're also joined by Hank Dulce in arguably the most liberal part of Texas. He's diligent with the statistics here on Force 13. Hello, Hank. And we're also with the company of Craig Fisher over in Scotland, well into his football, as I think everyone knows by now. A staunch Killie fan. Craig, hello, good evening.
Good evening, mate.
And finally, we have David Tones from the east coast of Australia to give us his perspective from that side of the globe as well. David, hello.
Evening, Nathan.
Morning, as
it's
it is
good to
there.
be here. Yeah, good morning.
We are really reaching all ends of the globe here for what we hope will be a very enlightening perspective. And thanks everyone for joining us on the panel and viewing, and hopefully we'll get something very interesting going. Well, here at Force 13 we felt, given current events, as though platforms such as ours should be beginning to give some airtime to world affairs, and we hope you find our discussions entertaining and insightful. If you'd like to take part in a future show, if we do one by the way, we don't know yet, this is just a pilot, send us a message. If there's interest, we may well go ahead regardless. But now, let's move on to the first topic of tonight, as you'll have seen in the first titles. After 3 terrorist attacks in the United Kingdom since March, will armed police become the new normal in this country? Should we be seeing armed police presence at our famous landmarks and events all the time? Should we have done this a long time ago? Or will we be losing one of our proudest national features, something that this country has always been notable for when you ask, for instance, an American? Hank, would you like to start on this?
Sure. Yeah, given the recent the terrorism incidents in Manchester and London, it seems that this might need to be something that happens. For the United States, it's a controversial issue, to say the least. But it does have its pros and its cons. Pros in that, police are, armed. They're more ready when something happens. Cons is there's no longer really any middle ground between community watch and military, if you know what I mean. And it limits it can, in a way, it can limit how people can perceive their positiveness. So they can see it more as militaristic instead of just protecting the city. It just doesn't necessarily feel right when they're armed with firearms and whatever else they have. But police officers, for the most part, are good people. And me, being, the person I am, I feel like it might be something that United Kingdom might also have to consider.
Okay.
But given that, all this terrorism stuff is being centered in Europe, this could quickly backfire or quickly benefit the country as a whole.
Interesting. Before we move on to our UK-based folks, I just wanted to see what Cesar thought as well over in Mexico, because surely all the police are armed there too, aren't they? Is it good or bad?
Well, it is a really tough question about the terrorist attacks in Manchester and London, but in my point of view, I think that the police and even the the civils or well, the people around there should take more precautions or new strategies or talk about new strategies at least to prevent or detect anything like this, because I mean, two terrorist attacks in just days of difference is really strange in my point of view. And well, really don't I don't know what to say about it. Just is something that nobody wants to see it. Nobody wants to even being witness of that. I mean, watching people dying in these circumstances is just something that's terrible, actually.
The interesting thing about London is that armed police were responding on the scene very quickly indeed to shoot the terrorists. Cesar, just quick one for you. If something like that was to happen in Mexico, how would the police be responding there? They'd be shot immediately there as well? Do you think it would happen quickly and efficiently, so to speak?
Well, that is a really tough question because Mexico hasn't had any terrorist attack.
Yes.
But I must say that the response, it will be practically the use of force.
Okay.
I mean,
lethal force, of course. Yes. And that's that. John, what are your thoughts?
Okay, so I've done a bit of research about
we like that.
The UK police and our style of policing, because we have a very community-based policing force, and I'm sure Craig can attest to that as well, being up in Scotland. A lot of our police force is unarmed in general. Historically, they were only armed in World War II, but they weren't armed on patrols. That armed response only began in about 1976 over in Yorkshire. And I'm sure David as well can attest to, I believe, John Howard's campaign in the 1990s in regards to the legislation of guns over in Australia, where they had a very similar system to Hank over in the United States, where they were allowed to carry firearms. But John Howard, 12 days after an attack, I can't remember the attack, but it killed a lot of people, put forward to his government a way of stopping firearms in for everyday people. And then within the first year, the chances of getting killed by a gun were reduced by about 50%, and has stayed below 50% since that time. But why should we change that? What stops the police from shooting someone accidentally as they believe they have a weapon?
Well, that is the argument that people would put against that, isn't it?
So we look over in the States as well with the Black Lives Matter movement, which is down to police shootings of more police shootings of ethnic minorities over white people. And the statistics are pretty stark. To have a return of phrase, why should we jump out of the frying pan and into the fire and put ourselves in that position where I can be walking down the street, I've not got a weapon, and I can be shot by police? Why should that happen? I think that our police are doing a great job focusing on community policing.
So you're most concerned about abuse of power?
Yeah. Because absolute power corrupts absolutely, to quote Spider-Man.
Okay. David, would you like to respond to what was occurring in Australia? I think we got feedback somewhere as well.
On the 2nd of February 2016, former Prime Minister John Howard reflected on 20 years of gun control, and he also reflected on the introduction of gun control legislation in the aftermath of the Port Arthur massacre as one of the defining achievements of his time in office.
Now, David, we had a little discussion about what we were going to discuss today previously, and you said that the police are still armed with guns in your area. Is that right?
Yes, the entire police force in this country, including the federal police, do have the right to carry arms. Back on September 29, 2014, Police Commissioner Ian Stewart, at a National Police Remembrance Day, the day before, he ordered his troops, or gave the order for all police to carry firearms whilst on duty. This was also a response to the heightened terror concerns. And on September the 18th, the order went out.
But to ask you the question about the UK, David, do you think things need to change, or what we currently have is, I guess, the armed task forces that they have out there, which deal with these incidents, the armed response units. Are those specialist units alone enough, or should it be more widespread, in your opinion?
I think it should be widespread. Perhaps it should come down to personal choice. However, in Britain, this tradition stretches back to the 19th century. Metropolitan Police Force was formed. People feared the military, wanted to avoid a police force that was oppressive, according to a report by the BBC. If police officers don't have guns, they can't use firearms against citizens. Moreover, police can't have their own guns used against them. Now, just expanding on your comment, this was by only allowing some officers to be armed, like a firearms unit in every police force in Britain, and cops who patrol security sensitive places like airports. The logic goes there's less of a risk of gun violence overall. However, Nathan, in 2013, the Australian Institute of Criminology released a report detailing fatal police shootings between 1989 and 2011. In that period, police fatally shot 105 people. The victims were almost entirely male. 60% were between the age of 20 and 39 years of age.
And how many of them were armed?
Well, that's the point. Those persons shot by police, 42% suffered a mental illness at the time of the shooting.
I mean, going on to David's point with police firearms and stuff. I mean, what stops if we gradually increase the amount of police that have firearms? Doesn't that increase the amount of criminals who will also have firearms, and won't that filter down?
That's something that I always thought of about that particular point. It's difficult, isn't it? Because once the police are armed, the criminals will want to become more armed.
Exactly.
Even those who aren't intending necessarily to shoot, it's more self-defense, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, I'm going to give you an anecdote. I worked in a supermarket, and I saw two armed police officers walk into my supermarket and buy their lunch, which is an everyday occurrence around here because it was the only supermarket in the area the police force went to. But these were two Derbyshire constabulary officers who were armed. You could quite clearly see their 9mm weapon at the side, and that was still a bit disconcerting for me as a person who is used to seeing unarmed police officers on the streets all the time. You saw them come into a public place with a firearm. It is still disconcerting, and the idea of our police force being militarized in a way similar to the United States is really scary for someone like myself.
I think the general public opinion in this country would be something similar to that.
Yeah. I mean, I understand that in some countries it's a standard way of life. You walk down the street, you see a copper in the round, but it's not here. And for it to change maybe in a month or two, for me, it is just a bit unsettling.
Is there any middle ground, a compromise here to make between arming the police force entirely and what we have right now?
I think what we've got right now is, well, it could be expanded further, so we could have more armed response vehicles with police officers who are specially trained to discharge firearms.
And I guess that goes down to funding, doesn't it? Which has been cut.
I mean, it's probably incredibly
force?
weird for some people to, like Hank and Cesar, who are used to armed police, to hear this kind of conversation going on where we're debating whether or not our police should be armed, because for you guys, it's an everyday occurrence.
Yes. But is there then, do we not have any cause to be making a comparison to the US? Is it not a comparable thing in this country?
Not really, because me and you can't go down to a supermarket and buy a gun and ammo for less than £1,000. Hank can go down to Walmart or Target and buy a gun and ammo for less than $600. Is that correct, Hank?
Yeah, I could have testified to that.
So, you know, I watched the Michael Moore documentary, The Bowling for Columbine. Don't know if anyone else has seen it. And he went and opened a bank account and got a shotgun and ammo as a free gift for opening a bank account.
Oh my. That's remarkable.
I mean, you know, we don't have that society where guns, I don't have a gun on me right now. We don't have a gun on our sofa.
I don't know anyone who does.
We don't have that society, so I suppose for us who's used to that sort of society where we don't have firearms in the general public.
But say, I mean, these terrorists used knives, didn't they?
Yeah,
they're still very, very deadly. How are the police going to stop them?
We have a lot of non-lethal alternatives. We've got tasers, we've got the stun rounds, we've got loads of other non-lethal alternatives which will allow us to essentially arrest the individuals who are committing these atrocities. And I'm not, in no way, shape or form, am I condoning their activities. A lot of these people, Islam is a peaceful religion. It preaches pacifism, and these people are, again, basically the antithesis of Islam. And I hate it, and I hate everything that they're doing. And yet, I don't think it's right to shoot them dead. We should be able to subdue them non-lethally and put them through the criminal justice system, put them through trial, put them through court. Let the people decide whether they're guilty or innocent based on the evidence the police have found. We shouldn't just shoot them, because what is that achieving?
Well, it's achieving their inability to kill any more people themselves, isn't it?
But if we taser them, then they're also not able to kill people. If we taser them and incapacitate them, they're not able to kill people, and we're able to put them through the criminal justice system.
But you have to get pretty close to them in order to tase them.
Yeah, but I suppose you have to get within a fairly good distance to be able to shoot somebody effectively. If someone's more than 100 yards away, and there's people running to and from, you're not really be able to kind of shoot that person without possibly hitting someone innocent.
Yes, I think that did happen, didn't it?
Yeah, there is an instance from the attack in London where an innocent bystander was shot by the police.
Okay, we're just about almost done with that, but if anyone does have any extra comments for us, now's your time.
David has just asked what happens if a British police officer is confronted with someone holding a gun or they're armed guards on the British Parliament. To answer your question, David, yeah, there are armed guards and armed police officers around the Houses of Parliament and Westminster Palace and diplomatically secure areas such as Buckingham Palace and the such. If a British police officer who is unarmed is confronted by someone who is armed, I suspect they press a little button on their radios, which basically is like a 999 call for emergency services.
Yeah.
And I suspect as well they keep an open radio channel, so only certain people have taser guns, which are people who have been tased themselves, so they know how it feels. I know a lot of our police officers they get pepper sprayed, so they know how it feels before they pepper spray someone.
Okay.
And the same tasers as well.
Any other thoughts from anyone on the panel here?
To be honest, using weapons, it's a fight too hard, really, because you get guns, one person gets shot, then you have another half saying, well, it's an injustice to the system, one innocent person is injured, better than.
Yeah, I agree with you, Craig. I mean, it's one of those things is you're never going to please everybody when it comes to something like this. There's going to be people pro and con against any decision made by any government in any country of the world.
Oh, we're going to be getting onto that. Okay, well, I think we've covered that well enough. Now we're going to move on to our next feature this evening. Now, we're entering the final days before the general election here in the United Kingdom, the first since 2015, and triggered by what people might call our unelected Prime Minister Theresa May. But will she get the public's approval in their first opportunity to register their actual feelings in the ballot box? Since the election was called, the opposing Labour Party has gained traction under Jeremy Corbyn, with other parties such as the Liberal Democrats, the SNP, UKIP, Plaid Cymru and the Green Party all hoping to get a foothold in the election. Though recent polling shows that not much is likely to change away from the frontrunners. Since not all of our panellists are much aware of the British situation, as you'd expect, let's begin with Craig and John's opinions and see if they sway you, or indeed our panellists from abroad. Well, Craig, John, which one of you would like to begin?
I did a lot of babbling on about UK police and stuff, so I'm going to hand it over to Craig if he wants to start.
If we can hear him well enough, I hope.
If you can.
Yes, go ahead.
Well, mainly, depending on what you're interested in, if you're interested in more a stable UK, but then again, whatever, my political views are pretty much neutral.
It's a very intriguing situation when you think of Scotland in particular.
Let's just leave them.
You don't want to discuss Scotland.
Let's just leave that in the blank, because
really?
That lot are completely different. Every time Theresa May says something about them, they throw their toys out the pram. But to be honest, my political views they're not really strong.
Well, let me ask you a few questions then. Who do you think is going to win this election overall?
Probably Conservatives.
That's what the polls have been saying the whole time. Though Labour have been getting pretty close in the last few days. But it looks like the best that they could possibly hope to achieve really is a hung parliament, which is a distinct possibility, because we could have a hung parliament with none of the smaller parties being able to get enough support to actually go into a coalition. And I'm not sure Conservative and Labour would run together, would they? That doesn't seem right. No. But Craig, come on, you got to have something to say about the dominant party in your country, the SNP.
Spoiled children. As I said, throw the toys out the pram at every insult thrown at them instead of taking it on the chin and going and bearing it.
Craig?
Our First Minister is a complete... I'm literally laying into my...
I was just about to ask what are your opinions on Nicola Sturgeon.
Yes.
Oh, here we go then.
In less than 5 minutes, tell me your opinions on Nicola Sturgeon, because, you know...
Well, to be honest, she's basically the absolute epitome of a spoiled child. She literally wants attention. I mean, attention.
I don't suppose you support the second referendum on independence?
No, I do not. Because
could I ask you quickly why you don't support a second referendum on independence?
Well, mainly because the first independent referendum, people said no. That for me is basically people say no.
Yeah.
And as I've seen in previous, the EU referendum, she wanted to stay. She lost that. So technically, First Minister here, if you lose 2 referendums, you've automatically got to go. She should have gone because she lost both. She was wanting to have an independent Scotland. She lost that.
I mean, my personal opinion on the referendums as well, I think, is just that if a result is called, then there shouldn't be another one for at least a set amount of time, quite a lengthy amount of time, probably at least 10 years. What would you think of that?
Well, to be honest, I don't really see what's going to change when our assets aren't really that great. And if we go independent, we can't exactly turn to a country and say, oh, by the way, can we borrow a little bit of money off of you? When independence is basically, as it says on the tin, it's basically independent. It's basically jog on. You're on your own. You got to find your own way of money. Make your own way. Make your own business.
Yes. We're
Yeah,
still
it's
struggling to
fine.
hear you though a little bit there, Craig. We'll come back to you shortly. I might want to bravely ask Hank about this, and maybe taking it on the angle of which party might well be best for the United States, if any. I'm not sure.
That's probably not a very good question to ask right now, but
Well, since most of them hate your president.
is true.
don't get me started. It's hard to say. Like, if the Conservative Party would, I'll put it this way: Trump isn't the best conservative out there. We know that.
No.
But say we had someone else who was conservative around our country, better than Donald Trump.
Right.
The Conservative Party would be looked at a lot in a much better light. Now, in terms of the United Kingdom, I have no clue because I take them to the United Kingdom politics. I'm sorry.
Well, you know, I look at these parties, and most of them, to be honest, are saying very similar things.
That would bring you on to a very nice point. Is it they say this, that, the next thing, just want you to vote, and then basically, in a way, they lie through their teeth. They don't deliver. They don't do it. They say, go back to the last general election. Some of the parties said, "Oh, we'd have a better NHS system."
Oh,
Do
yeah.
you? No, you don't. In fact, it's getting worse.
Well, Craig, which party do you... and I'm going to point this to John as well after you've given your answer. Which party do you think will do the best for our National Health Service?
As far as I can see, it's a lot. I wouldn't even see it another miracle for it. I don't even know which party would save it.
You think it's beyond being saved?
Well, it's a complete laughing stock. It really is.
Right. John, what
And
do you
it's
think?
seen-
Sorry.
I do apologise. What was the question you asked?
Which party do you think would be best for the NHS in its current state?
So, me personally, I am on medication every day. I pay £8.60 for my prescription every month, which equates to about $15, roughly, maybe $16 US dollars.
For our American audience out there.
Well,
We
American
do have plenty
audience,
in the UK too, don't worry.
16 US dollars for 56 pills that I have to take every night before I go to bed. If it was to be privatised, I'm probably looking at paying a lot more. And no, that's a bit weird. Shouldn't healthcare be for everybody and not just for those who can afford it? Because if it gets privatised, I'm going to have to pay more, and I can't afford that. So I'll go with that medication that I actually need.
And how likely do you think privatisation is? I'm sorry, I'm really incoherent this evening, but go ahead.
Under some governments, privatisation is probably more than likely. Under other governments, it's probably less than likely.
Oh, you're not wishing to speculate which ones.
Now, I can tell you which one, but I am politically neutral in most things. I don't have a party that I favour. And
I think we could take a guess.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I've got a friend over in Florida who actually finds it... She can't afford to pay her health insurance. She finds it cheaper to pay the fine for not having health insurance than it is to pay for the health insurance.
Wow.
And I find that a bit weird to try to wrap my head around. Because healthcare should be for everybody, not for those who can afford it.
It's not mainly, oh wait, you broke the bone. Oh well, you can afford
Yeah,
it.
exactly. You shouldn't go into an A&E department after an emergency or
And I think-
an emergency room department and then be means tested whether or not you can afford healthcare.
I think
Go
most
with-
people would agree with you that it should be universally free, but then it's got a massive expense in maintaining it. So where does all that money come from?
From our national insurance contributions that come out automatically out of our wages. So every month we get our wage, we're taxed, and then we also pay national insurance. And those contributions go towards the benefits and the healthcare system and things like that.
The question is that contribution big enough right now? Would they need to be raised?
Whilst I was working, I I was earning about £1,000 a month, I'd get taxed about 150. That's income tax, and then I would pay about £50 national insurance contribution. That's a month. Times that by how many working people there are on an average wage. That's a lot of money, and that's a lot of money that goes to that NHS.
Yes. Well, to be honest, if I was to be paying my own medical treatment, I would be skinned by it. And I would the amount of times I've been in hospital because I've got bones.
Oh yes.
I've seen a photograph of a receipt from someone in the United States who gave birth, and the hospital charged the mother for them to hold the baby.
Wow.
And to be honest,
yes.
I spent 3 weeks in hospital due to my destroyed right elbow.
Yes,
Sorry,
Craig often gets into sporting misdemeanors and breaks certain bones of his body and ends up in hospital for 3 weeks.
Well, to be honest, this one was when I was 5 years old.
Okay.
Sling, to be honest. That's a fun story. It's not really a fun story. It's a gross story. Bone came in. I ended up in hospital for 3 weeks. Stitches, and apparently, according to one of the stories, the profanity coming out of the 5-year-old's mouth at that stage was unbelievable. To be honest, the amount of times I've broken bones, it's looking at if I was in the States, I'd be concerned that I broke bones.
Hank, over in the United States, healthcare, what's your take? Just a quick one.
I mean...
Is it quick?
No. Obamacare, terrible. Trump care, also probably terrible.
Any care at all, Hank, as far as I can see, is going to be absolutely...
Well, Trump was banging on about improving health care and stuff. I don't really know what any of that means. That'll be for another day, I'm sure.
I mean, it's just... There's some things that I agree with him about, and there's some things I don't. One of the things I don't necessarily agree with him about will be coming up later, but about the whole healthcare thing, I honestly don't have too big of a stance on it. The current healthcare system we have right now is not as good as it could be. It's the best way I'll put it.
Okay, I guess we'll leave it there. And now we'll move on to what is probably the most exciting topic of the evening, at least for our panel, it would appear. And our final topic of tonight's first ever Debate 13 is something somewhat closer to our sphere of coverage, of course. Last week, the US President Donald Trump announced that the United States would be pulling out of the Paris Climate Accord. Watch this.
In order to fulfill my solemn duty to protect America and its citizens, the United States will withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord Thank you. Thank you. But begin negotiations to re-enter either the Paris Accord or in really entirely new transaction on terms that are fair to the United States, its businesses, its workers, its people, its taxpayers. So we're getting out, but we will start to negotiate, and we will see if we can make a deal that's fair. And if we can, that's great.
The Paris Climate Accord was a deal struck in 2015 by most countries throughout the world, including the United States. However, Trump and those on his side argue that the deal is not good for the United States due to other countries, such as China, only pledging to curb their CO2 emissions way into the future, whereas the US pledged to begin immediately, along with many other countries. But what do our panel think? Let's, on this one, I'm sure everyone wants to begin, but we're going to start with David if he's available. David?
How does one define climate change? And for my position, good on him from walking away from it. I think it's a waste of money, and it's up to each individual country to reduce pollution, but is global warming real?
Well, that might be for another day, maybe a full hour's discussion. We might touch on it once or twice, but we'll just go around the room. Cesar.
Yeah, well, about that decision of Trump in
Oh, yes.
in that agreement.
He's still building that wall.
Well, actually, Trump is not building a wall. If I remember well, is having some economic issues as far as I know. And honestly, I don't think it will be built, but that's other story.
Yes.
About that agreement of the global warming, of that, I mean, I think it's a decision without any solid argument or without a solid evidence, or that Trump take time to think about it. I mean, Trump is a guy who takes the decisions like rapidly. I mean, he's an action man. He don't want anything that could possibly distract him or distract his nation about his objectives. But I mean, the climate change is real. The global warming has been existed in all these years, and it has been more evident in the past decade. And the poles are melting. The climate is now more extreme, more hot in the hot places, more cold in colder places, more rain in tropical places. And well, we saw too many hurricanes breaking records in the past 5 years at least. And
but now we've got a quiet record. We'll move on from that. Hank, is Trump doing the best thing for America?
I wrote this down on a document. So there are I feel like there's some pros and some cons. We'll start with some of the cons of the agreement. Why he chose to leave the deal. First one is that as you said earlier, bigger countries aren't doing their share. Like China, they're holding off on their CO2 emissions while the United States wants to do it immediately.
I think that's really what he was looking at. You gotta think that it probably was, given what he often says about China.
Yeah, and let's see. The agreement is in the light. It's not a great escape for some massive polluters, but it's kind of a poison chalice, if you know what I mean, for emerging economies.
Okay.
So it's there's what I'm basically saying here is that there are plentiful words but no action, and that some of these newly developed countries or developing countries really haven't taken any steps to move away from their current state. Another one is that these pledges will only come into the force in 3 years, in 2020.
Okay.
And by that time, global warming will be worse than it is now, and it might be a little bit too late by that point, if what the current predictions are come to fruition. It's kind of a shortfall in funds. So what I've searched up is that the IEA has calculated that transforming to fossil fuel free world will only
now. Who's that? IEA.
What?
Who? You said IEA? Who's that?
I don't know. I looked it up, but the fossil free world will need at least $1 trillion a year by 2020 to get rid of all fossil fuels. That's obviously huge, and that might not be attainable by every single country in this deal.
$1 trillion from every country?
Not from every country, but from but from the
in total
equivalent of $1 trillion for the United States. For the more developed, for less developed countries, not that much, but
so proportional.
Yeah, proportional, basically. And that will probably not suffice to save, the planet in general, because it probably is going to go, as I said, to the rich nations that are creating more pollution than the more, developed nations, or developing nations rather. So that might end up backfiring on them if catch my drift a little bit. Now, and it's also kind of a vague deal. Like it just talks about technologies and actions, but doesn't mention them at length.
Okay.
The term renewable energy was just mentioned once in relation to Africa. So it's a deal that just has a lot of, just vague talk and not a lot of action. So those are some of the cons. Here are some of the pros of the climate deal. It helps climate change. It saves the planet from carbon emissions through fossil fuels and all that stuff. We already know we pretty much know what's causing it. There's no winners and losers really with the pact. We're all working towards a better future, and it has aims to reduce emissions and all that sort of stuff. So I think these reasons, the reason why Trump backed out of this, and keep in mind he's not. What people are kind of misunderstanding about this a little bit is that he's acting on what his country wants. It's not really what his.
That's true. It was in his pledge when he was running for president that he would do this.
Yeah, and people are acting like they're kind of shocked by this, when in reality it wasn't that big of a surprise, because we knew that he doesn't really know the full scale of climate change, which is, something that can be a little bit controversial to some people. I mean, if you actually know, the whole scientific aspect behind it, that it's real, it's happening. But that's something that he just doesn't understand, and it's not something that everyone should get so upset about. It's just that sometimes that there's just a little bit of misunderstanding, and that's something that the American people really don't understand. Is that because
some people do feel that he's blown the US's chances of that it's going to be doomsday after this, but I do personally feel, I shouldn't really say it as a moderator, but I do personally feel that there is still plenty more opportunity yet to come, and it's certainly not the end of the world. Hank, I've got to move on to John. John, what are your thoughts?
Okay, so we all agree in some way or another the planet is warming up. However, the problem with climate change legislation is that I think the Paris Accord allows countries who are developing to buy clean air from countries like the United Kingdom and the United States. So, in a way, it's not really mitigating the circumstances of climate change, because somewhere in Africa can buy clean air from the United States or the United Kingdom, or China can buy clean air from the United States and the United Kingdom. The air's not physically moving, they're just meeting quotas. But by withdrawing from the Paris Climate Accord, I think that Donald Trump has effectively withdrawn the United States from the international community, just like the UK triggering Article 50 to withdraw from the European Union. If we as a planet can work together to reduce what damage our species has done to the planet and the environment, we have a better chance of mitigating it. Probably not reversing it, but mitigating it.
Great.
I think that's Sorry. I think that's what is missing, is the fact that we shouldn't focus on the UK and the United States and every individual country as an individual country. It should focus on the fact that we should work together as a species to mitigate a change that we have done to the world since the 1800s, since the Industrial Revolution.
Okay, Craig, what are your thoughts?
To be honest, climate change is happening, or global warming is happening. Climate's forever changing. I've noticed in the last few months that there's this giant crack in one of the ice sheets. I think it's either Antarctica or Antarctic. It's in Antarctic regions anyway, and it's growing, and it's going at an alarming rate. And if that breaks off, well, you just know there's trouble with it. And yes, it's still doable. You can still stop it, but you will not reverse the damage. It's our own fault. We brought it on ourselves. Oh, look, oil. Wait, Industrial Revolution. Oh, let's bleed it dry. Because basically, as I was told when I was in school, basically, in a way, do forgive me if I do take this at an extreme rate, humans are basically pests, in a way. Because we basically find every resource to survive. We basically bleed it dry until there's no more. Then we move on to another, bleed that dry. And then we'll move on to something else. We're basically killing everything. We're basically the bacteria, the evil bacteria that kills everything. That eradicate the life. Basically, going back towards, before humans even came onto Earth, the Earth was green. The Earth was probably an absolute stunning place to be. But until humans came, Industrial Revolution came, it was pretty much downhill from there. Yes, we didn't know how carbon emissions worked, greenhouse gases worked, until now. And then basically you've got your El Niños, your La Niñas. Basically, either El Niños don't help, they warm the atmosphere and that makes things worse. La Niñas do help, they control the atmosphere down. But in terms of humans, if it's like a neutral year, you know the difference. You can really tell. Because, global temperatures have been going up. And 2016 was a record, as we all know. Some of us know anyway, that it was a record in temperatures. In terms of winter as well, it was a complete joke in how warm it was. I think it was 2015 though. And the record flooding that hit Cumbria and, and all that in the UK when Desmond and Frank hit. That these are things that can be stopped and they can be slowed down. But as this happens, as the Earth warms, what would literally happen to the Earth's climate? Because you know how the jet stream is important as well, and that uses cold air and warm air to be strong and weak. If you get an Earth that's dominated by hot air, you have no jet stream, so you have no control.
I think there's going to be unpredictable effects.
Oh, yeah. We can also look at, for example, if the Earth is warming up and the poles are melting, what have those glaciers and those ice caps held within that ice for so long? For example, bacteria, viruses, those sorts of contagions, they've held contagions that we've not encountered before. And if those are released into the wild as well, it can cause unforeseen and catastrophic side effects, which will dramatically reduce the population of the Earth and maybe give the Earth a chance to recover from the damage that we've caused. In the past 100 years or so, the population of the Earth has gone from maybe 3 billion to 6 billion. So it's almost doubled in maybe 100 years. In 100 years' time, we're looking at estimates of maybe 7, 8, 9 billion people on this planet. Is that sustainable? It's not.
Because, the amount of resources that are required, with a growing population per year.
It sounds horrible to say. I've got a friend, my best friend. She's got a master's in environmental management, and she said, it's as hard as it is to say, the chances of a contagion wiping out half the human race is quite high now because we ain't doing anything to stop it.
Exactly. And the closest that came was probably the Black Plague.
Yeah.
Back in, I think, the 18th century.
Okay. We
We
ran off on a tangent a little bit there, but Cesar, I don't think... Sorry, Craig, I don't think we've visited Cesar yet.
Don't worry. Well, yes, I mean, there's a lot to talk about about this topic. I mean, of course, there are cons and pros about about this decision and about the consequences. But I mean, if I analyze the Trump's decision about to leaving the agreement, maybe that's why, because he sees that the world is really not working to not pollute a lot the planet, or maybe the countries are not helping each other to create strategies or new material or new energies that don't pollute the planet. I mean, the media has said that Trump just left the agreement, and now a lot of people got crazy and criticized him and, well, everything.
Yeah, everything
But
else, son.
yeah, but I mean, maybe there's something behind that is not revealed, or maybe that the media is not revealed, and that's why maybe we should think about his decision. I mean,
Yes.
he has a
That's
he's very
interestingly
famous.
mild from someone in Mexico, Cesar, saying that.
Well, I mean,
He's only 10 to 12 weeks.
he's really hated in many parts of the world. In Mexico, well, it's highly hated, but I mean, there maybe he has some decisions that possibly his nation or the world or United States will see in the future. I mean, this is just a decision that occurred days ago, but maybe the effects will happen maybe in the next week, month, year, who knows?
Yeah.
All right.
And
The thing is that brings me back onto, well, that I could easily come back on it. What I said is, our human resources and what we use, and we overuse it. We in a way, you would sort of know we'd learned the hard way, and we are learning the hard way, big time. Because we have just looked at it. Oh, global warming. We'll sort it out later. We'll sort it out later.
Okay,
Again.
I think we get the gist. I just want to go back to David from his opening thoughts, and after listening to everyone else, David, or anything else from you?
I'll reserve further comment to a later date, but it's been interesting.
Okay. Well, I think John wanted to say something.
I was just thinking that instead of us thinking about all of this in an individualistic point of view, like I said earlier, is we should think of it as a collective. Is what can, for example, myself, you, Nathan, Hank, Cesar, David, and Craig, what can we do as a collective to help mitigate this? I mean, I have two bins in my house. One is for general waste, one is for recyclables. So everything I do, I recycle as much as I can, and that is my part that I can play. Instead of just, what can we do together? Also think about what you can do on yourself. So can you recycle? Yeah. Can you cut down the amount of emissions you use? Can you turn off lights at night? Can you turn off your tele?
But what I find interesting, though, John, is when you think about Trump and his decision to back out of this, he is on the premise that everything that you've just mentioned is overturned every week by China building a coal power plant.
Yeah, but then again, cows also fart and give off a lot of methane.
Sorry?
Cows also fart and give off a lot of methane, which is a greenhouse gas.
Right.
So, are we going to go kill all the cows?
Well, I didn't mention cows. You tell me. Are we going to kill all the cows?
It's the same premise. A herd of cows, I don't know the exact statistics, but a herd of cows can probably, maybe sort of, in a probably ideal world, give off as much greenhouse gas as a coal power plant. Maybe less, but I'm kind of over-exaggerating the point. But the greenhouse gases are given everywhere. They're released by volcanoes. Sulfur dioxide is released by volcanoes on a daily basis, and that's a greenhouse gas. Carbon dioxide is released by plants at night. That's a greenhouse gas. Just by China building one power plant, as long as they can restrict the amount of pollutants they're giving and not buy
clean air. They don't appear to be doing. We look at the satellite images, there's still smog there every day.
But I believe who's the Chinese premier? I can't remember his name, but I think he has vowed to stick by the Paris Accord.
Yes. And
Well, he would, because they don't have to do anything different until 2030.
But
Yeah,
it's
any
still
of
giving them.
things that I really like, is John's doing. He's trying to recycle as much as he can. But I mean, the great example of recycling is probably the Netherlands. I mean, I really like their way of recycling. They're using literal plastic waste, bottles, bags, you name it. Anything that's useless, they would literally use it as power. And I am not kidding. They use its power.
Yeah,
They
I mean,
generate that much power.
I think
They
we
could
also
probably-
have to have faith in science as well. I think science will discover a lot of new things in the coming years that will make what to many people may appear to be a unsalvageable situation appear more better, I guess, for wanting of a better word. Maybe a little bit optimistic of me, but I do think that scientific leaps and bounds that they do always make will come up with something eventually, though it may not be soon.
I mean, I know certain companies over here, certain supermarkets, are recycling all of their packaging and putting it back into new packaging, and all the food waste goes straight to an incinerator.
Well, that's another topic. Big corporations are responsible. They have a big footprint, don't they?
Exactly. And if corporations can take steps to reduce their footprint, then maybe that will be a role model for the rest of us to reduce our footprint at the same time.
That's actually quite a good point, because we don't really pay more attention to what we're putting out there and what our carbon footprint is, because that in a way is an alarming statistic to look at, because we're not paying attention to it. We're just saying, just like basically, this is probably one of the oddest comparisons you could make. As a teenage child, your mum tells you to tidy your room up, but you say you'll do it later. That's pretty much like our attitude towards climate change. We say, I will stop it later. We'll do it again later. But if I put it off, you don't do it. And it gets worse and worse and worse as time goes on. That brings me back into the point. We learn, and we learn the hard way.
Okay, well, we're just about out of time here. So, Hank, do you have any closing comments after everything you've just heard there? I'm going to throw it to you before we finish.
We'll just have to wait and see how this whole thing plays out. I mean, people may be worried in the short term. Will have any effects in the long term? And so we'll have to see. That's just what we'll have to find out.
Because we can come up with our own separate theories and all that. But
so I have to say, John, just before that, I do have to bring to attention that it appears to be a long road ahead in that regard, because the public at large don't really see it so much as a threat. Why is that? I'm not sure.
I think that's because our media over here is not giving climate change the coverage it needs to have. I don't think we're informed enough as young people going through school systems to affect a change. If the schools, I mean, when I was younger, when I was in school, it was taught about, and it's taught about more and more and more.
Yep.
But it's not enough. If you change young people's minds, they will eventually change the elder generation's minds as well. It needs to be discussed, and it needs to be out there. And in my opinion, my personal opinion, by Donald Trump withdrawing from this, he has effectively withdrawn that ideal from the United States, and the United States is a massive country. And it's just daft.
Well, thank you everyone for taking part. We are just about out of time. But thank you very much indeed. I was Nathan Foy, by the way, moderating this event this evening. This was our first ever Debate 13 programme, and who knows whether we'll be doing another one again in the future. Rather sedate, actually. I thought it would get a little bit more argumentative out there, but it appears not. But if you want to join our panel for a show in the future, if we do one, we don't know yet, but we're just going to gauge demand and gauge how people respond to this. Send us a message through any of the usual mediums on Force 13, Facebook, Twitter. You can send us an email, a new email address, by the way. contact@force-13.co.uk is our latest email address, which you can get us by now. And you can also think about setting the agenda. We're always open to ideas about what you want to talk about. There's no bias on here, at least not for me, because I have to moderate, of course. I would love to express some, but I cannot. But that is all from us tonight. We'll see you again soon, and of course, we'll be tracking the storms whenever they arrive. It's too quiet out there, isn't it? Good night.